Orale! Bienvenidos and welcome to the Familia FFB podcast. I'm your host, Jorge Martin, and we are on YouTube, Familia. Please make sure to give us a like and subscribe. Just find Familia FFB on YouTube, and we are there for you. And we are a proud member of the Fantasy Points Media Group. Please make sure to go to fantasypoints.com, use the promo code Familia22, Familia22 if you're doing it in Spanish, and you get some of the best fantasy minds. You get Graham Barfield, John Hanson, Joe Dolan, Scott Barrett, Tom Brawley. I mean, just it's Wes Hubert, just some of the best minds breaking down everything from a data standpoint. They are in the middle of 32 days, 32 articles, 32 podcasts, some of the best content leading up to training camp. Familia 22. Put in that, use that promo code. And Familia, I'm introducing. We got an invitado de lujo that, I mean, it's not just a return guest. He's someone I consider a good friend. And Vinny Bonsignore, mi amigo. Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, he is el hombre when it comes to. I mean, let's just look at his work. I mean, he's on Radio Nation Radio. He's on Vegas Nation and the Las Vegas Review Journal. He is the main man when it comes to the Raiders, which is why I love it that he's joining us. Vinny B, bienvenido. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, absolutely, Jorge, and thank you so much. And all those compliments go right back to you twofold, without question.
Oh man, Vinny, and you've had quite the offseason. Just no way to. I mean, gosh, new coach, superstar wide receiver. All of a sudden, there's even more Vegas heat going on. I want to ask a quick question about the change over to Josh McDaniels. His offense has been so prolific with the Patriots. Can we look at kind of like that offense just kind of being transplanted to Vegas with what's a really underrated, except for one guy, one underrated skill position group?
Yeah, and here's the thing, when you talk about Josh McDaniels coming here, as the play caller, and he's obviously going to coordinate the offense. He's the head coach, but offense is his forte. And you look at the success that he had in New England. Obviously, 6 Super Bowl wins, 9 Super Bowl appearances. It goes without saying how impressive that resume is. But here's the thing. What's so intriguing about this partnership now is I'm not so sure. Obviously, he had the greatest quarterback to ever play the game in Tom Brady. No question about it. He had guys like Gronkowski over the years. He's had a Randy Moss fleetingly, for a couple of years. But when you talk about the collective talent that he has to work with right now, offensively, with Derek Carr and Davante Adams and Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow, some of the other wide receivers that they brought in, Josh Jacobs, Kenyon Drake in the backfield, I'm not so sure that he's had this wide array of talent, this vast amount of talent. And I could say the same thing about really Derek Carr as well. This is on paper a very intriguing offense for the Raiders, and so much talent and so much veteran talent as well. It's funny because we were talking to Derek Carr about this during minicamp, and I had asked him, the difference between working with this kind of a veteran team compared to, let's be honest, some of the real young teams that he's played with, whether you're talking about hoping that Henry Ruggs, gets it together, hoping that Brian Edwards gets it together, hoping that a young player is ready to go and can produce. Well, when you look at this offense now, you've got proven commodities, and not just proven commodities, but some of the best in the league in a Davante Adams and a Hunter Renfrow and a Darren Waller and a Derek Carr. It just makes all the difference in the world. I don't think there's going to be any hurry up and wait for somebody. I think everybody is ready to do what they can do. And if they just do what they've done in the past, this offense has a chance to be really prolific.
And I think there's heightened expectations for Derek Carr. He had a great season from yardage standpoint, almost 5,000 yards. Definitely, when you're in the low 20s when it comes to the touchdowns, people are, fantasy players are wishing for a greater number. Now you've got one of the most prolific touchdown scorers from the wide receiver. For my money, he's the best wide receiver in the NFL. So you don't have to say it. I'll say it.
I agree.
When you add that, and considering the incredible connection that the two of them have, what can we look at for Derek Carr this year when it comes to his production?
Well, in a lot of ways, all you had to go back is look at the first 4 games last year when they had their head coach John Gruden was still here. Henry Ruggs was on the field and kind of emerging as that deep threat, that the Raiders envisioned when they drafted him 2 years before, or in 2020, and then a healthy Darren Waller. When things were when everyone was in place, when things were in place, we were talking about Derek Carr. A lot of people were talking about Derek Carr as, hey, if this keeps up, this is a guy that you can legitimately be talking about as an MVP candidate at the end of the year. Well, we all know what happened. The situation with John Gruden, there goes the head of the offense. The situation with Henry Ruggs, the tragic situation with Henry Ruggs, all of a sudden an emerging young player is no longer available. Took a big chunk out of what the Raiders were trying to do offensively. And then Darren Waller gets hurt and misses 5 at 6 games, I think it was, in a critical stretch. Well, when the wheels sort of fell off after that and the Raiders had to try to figure out different ways to do it with guys that weren't really, hadn't had much of a history of producing, obviously the numbers went down. And so that really wasn't the fault of Derek Carr. He was playing really well. It's just that the dynamics around him changed, and in some cases dramatically. Fast forward to this year, if guys stay healthy, and there's continuity from the coaching sideline as well, I don't see any reason why Derek Carr can't pick up where he was through that first month of last season, and in some ways be even better, because as good as Henry Ruggs was becoming from a deep ball threat, and how he changed, the way teams had to defend the Raiders, there's no question that Davante Adams is a vastly superior wide receiver to Henry Ruggs when you look at the entirety of that position. He's just simply, like you said, the best wide receiver in the NFL. You put that on the field with Derek Carr and alongside Darren and Hunter and everything else, this offense has a chance to be really, really good. And I think Derek Carr, being where he is mentally and physically, kind of at the peak years of his career, his numbers are going to reflect that. And it's not going to be necessarily that he's playing any better. He just has better players around him. And the example that I've been using is Matthew Stafford from the Lions. It's funny, I'll tell you a quick little story. But last year during training camp, the Raiders went to LA to practice against the Rams before playing them in a preseason game. And so I'm driving out to the Rams practice facility in Thousand Oaks, and anyone that's driven in Los Angeles knows that that could be a little bit of a chore. You're going to be spending a lot of time in the car making that drive. And so I'm listening to ESPN radio in LA, our good friends over at ESPN LA. And as I'm headed to practice, they're talking about Matthew Stafford, and they're comparing. And remember, this was Matthew Stafford coming into last year before he played even one snap with the Rams. And they were like, wow, you start looking at Matthew Stafford's numbers over his career in Detroit, and you start looking at Derek Carr's numbers, with the Raiders. And while Matthew had, a few years head start on him, when you looked at the comparable stats, they were almost identical. And so when the guys on ESPN LA were talking about it, they were like, did the Rams just trade for a clone of Derek Carr? And they were almost saying that in kind of a negative way a little bit, like what did the Rams really trade for? Well, we all saw what the Rams traded for. They traded for a guy that put them over the top as a Super Bowl winning quarterback and made some difference, making plays, and was a difference maker at his position, which is exactly what the Rams had envisioned. Why? He went to a team with much better talent than he had in Detroit. Obviously, Sean McVay, being a premier offensive mind and play caller, makes a difference as well. So if you're using that comparison, because the numbers are eerily similar, now Derek Carr not having to go anywhere else, just stay here with the Raiders, and the Raiders now improving the talent around him, there's no reason really why you can't see the numbers go up for Derek Carr, much like they did for Matthew Stafford last year with the Rams. And his numbers absolutely went up from the previous couple of years in Detroit. And it's not that Matthew was playing any better necessarily. He just had better players to throw the ball to.
I haven't gotten that, haven't had that comp yet, but I think it's absolutely perfect. absolutely perfect.
Go
Because
look at the numbers. Go look at the numbers.
And you get just upgrade in play caller, which is
Right.
which and Josh McDaniels is considered one of the best play callers in the
No
NFL.
doubt.
So it's just and add to it the fact that this is going to be the most the AFC West. There are going to be some shootouts. I mean, no matter how great the defenses are going to be, there are going to be some flat out, knockdown, drag out, 15-round heavyweight fights that are just going to be rival any Rocky movie. So love it. Got me pumped. You know what? Usually I jump into the running backs right now, but I want to jump into the receivers right now because two, I want to ask, I want to get what Davante Adams brings to this team, and also what your thoughts are on Hunter Renfrow kind of still maintaining a huge part of this offense especially when you look at guys like Wes Welker and Julian Edelman, who've been in that slot and still had huge seasons with big receivers around them. What are your thoughts on each of those players and in this offense?
Yeah. Well, let's start with Davante. And, obviously, Jorge, the numbers speak for themselves. You look at those numbers like, wow, this is a really good player. And, when you cover a team, you don't have a whole lot of time to be, intimately involved in watching other players from other teams. You kind of have an obvious understanding. Wow, Davante Adams is really good. Look at those numbers, but it wasn't really until the Raiders traded for Davante that I said, okay, I got to do some real homework on Davante Adams. Let me find as much film that I can of him. And it becomes apparent really quick when you watch him from that perspective and just start analyzing, why is it that this guy is so good? Well, it's not just because he runs fast and can catch the ball and all that kind of stuff, which is obviously what you need to do. Jorge, this dude is a unbelievable player at the line of scrimmage to be able to create separation from the very get-go with his footwork and his body movement. He obviously understands defenses, how to attack the coverages. So he's got that going for him. He's a fantastic, and I'm saying bar none, fantastic route runner that is just so precise in what he's doing. And then, of course, he could go up and get it. He's a big physical wide receiver, so he can out-muscle you. He's fast enough to create separation like that and do damage when the ball is in his hands. He's got tremendous hands, too. Let's not forget that. So watching the film of him, and I watched a lot of film of him, you just realize, okay, this isn't just a numbers guy. This guy is just flat out fantastic at wide receiver. So that's not going to change. I mean, he's literally still in the peak of his career as well, getting ready to turn 30. Everything's coming together at that age. Your mind, your physically, all of your understanding of the game. He's really coming to a team that he grew up rooting for in a part of the country that he wants to be, where he's able to be closer to his family. So everything's lining up from that perspective, barring any kind of an injury. And you knock on wood when you say that, when you're talking about football players, I think the sky's the limit for Davante Adams. But then talking about Hunter Renfrow, and some of the same things that I was just talking about with Davante Adams in terms of the understanding of the position, getting off the footwork off of the line of scrimmage, the precise route running, the ability in Hunter's case, and maybe in a sneaky sort of a way. I hate using that term, but maybe he does take some people by surprise. I can't imagine that that's still the case. But once the ball gets in his hands, his ability to make things happen and get extra yards just by being a really good football player with the ball in his hands. Some of those similarities that I'm talking about or some of those attributes that I'm talking about with Davante Adams, you see similarities, in Hunter Renfrow's game and understanding of the position. And so now you have two wide receivers that can literally teach a master class in how to play wide receiver alongside Derek Carr. And you'd be hard pressed to ever find a time where he had that kind of talent, proven talent too, at wide receiver. And we haven't even gotten into Darren Waller.
Before we get into Waller, and I do want to jump into him next, is with considering the fact that what we expect to see from both Adams and Renfrow and also what we expect from Waller, is there the rest of the wide receiver group, is it mostly kind of like role players who aren't going to be big fantasy contributors this season?
Probably, yeah. I think that, if I were to equate Hunter, Waller, and Adams to something, it would be kind of like along the lines of what the Rams had a few years ago when they had Cooper Kupp, Brandon Cooks, and Robert Woods. Three players that, as long as everybody stays healthy, I would not be shocked whatsoever if all three were hovering in that 90 to 100 catch season, and maybe even that 900 to 1,000 yards receiving. I think two of those guys at the very least are going to go over 1,000 yards, maybe even three. And the Rams were on pace for that. In fact, I think if you put Cooper Kupp got hurt that one year, it was 2018. If you put his season with Josh Reynolds, who replaced him, together, I think they got pretty darn close to 1,000 yards collectively. So had Cooper stayed healthy, I think he would have done it. But anyway, to answer your question, as far as the other wide receivers, because you have that kind of talent at the two wide receivers positions and at tight end, which you might as well just put a slash wide receiver next to Darren Waller because they line them up everywhere. You're not probably going to get the big, huge numbers from that quote unquote number 3 wide receiver. And when I think about the Raiders' number 3 wide receiver, you're talking about Keelan Cole, Demarcus Robinson, Mac Hollins. I think they'll be able to committee that third wide receiver position so that it's not maybe one person per se. I think they're going to be able to use that third wide receiver position as it suits them situationally. So if you're in the red zone, you might see a little bit more of Mac Hollins. If you want to stretch the field, maybe that's where Keelan Cole fits in. If you need that possession kind of wide receiver that can find a niche and find his way among a bunch of really good players, maybe Demarcus Robinson, because that's what he did in Kansas City. So I think that third wide receiver position is going to be a collective effort between Hollins, Cole, and Robinson.
Oh man, well, Waller.
Yeah,
We've also, talking about this offense, it made Rob Gronkowski an All-Pro. So, and we're talking about Waller having that kind of talent as far from a receiving standpoint. Is he, could, with him having a healthy season, could this really unleash a big season from Waller out of in this offense?
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think that, especially if he could just get back to where he was 2 years ago. He did miss 5-6 games last year. That obviously, put a dent in some of the numbers. We get that, understand it. So if he could stay healthy, I think he's going to be right there where he was a couple of years ago, if not more. And I think that, just talking to him, I know that the Raiders have some new plans for him, with the new offensive system, some different ways that they're going to utilize him. Kind of fascinated to see, how that all unfolds, because I still think that Darren Waller's best football is ahead of him. So there's still a ceiling there with Darren Waller, and maybe as good as he's been too. And that's when you say that, you're like, wow, he's been pretty darn good, but there's still room for improvement, and I think it's more along the lines of how he's used. So somebody like a Josh McDaniels being able to work with Darren Waller and figure out ways to line him up and utilize them, it'll be really interesting to see how that all plays out.
Yeah, it's crazy to think. In this offense, you really could see the three, Waller, Adams, and Renfrow, definitely all three of them having a shot at 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
And I think Adams will surpass it easily because he's going to have that kind of season. But man, and especially in the AFC West, where there's so many quarterbacks who are just, this is going to be like an Avengers. They're all, you got Thor one week. Yeah, it's
Right.
just, Hulk and everything. It's just, it's incredible. The running backs is going to be an interesting thing, because that Patriots offense, that McDaniels offense, can go from one guy being the focal point one week to another guy being a focal point. But I think, is it still shaping up like Josh Jacobs is going to be the 1A, and then maybe, maybe kind of like Kenyon Drake and Zamir White a little bit further down the pecking order? How do you see kind of like the touches breaking down?
Yeah, and obviously some of this is assuming that Kenyon Drake is fully clear from the injury and surgery that he had last year. By all accounts, that seems to be, what the plan is. So if he is healthy, I think you're right. Josh Jacobs, Kenyon Drake, Brandon Bolden as the third down back, with Zamir White kind of waiting in the wings. wouldn't surprise me, unless Zamir White just blows up in training camp, and really fights for a role immediately. I see Zamir White as a guy that maybe they could redshirt a little bit, and get his feet under him, learn what it's like to be a professional and all of those type of things. Maybe get him some touches here and there, but really get him lined up for a bigger payday down the road, because we don't know what the contract situations are going to be for Josh Jacobs. His 5th-year option wasn't picked up, so he's going into the last year of his Raiders contract. Same with Kenyon Drake. He's not signed beyond this season. So maybe Zamir White is a guy that projects a little bit forward in the future. But for now, I think that you have 2 really good running backs in Josh Jacobs and Kenyon Drake. And specifically with Josh Jacobs, you have a guy that's going to be hugely motivated because he's playing for his future, whether it's here in Las Vegas or elsewhere. He needs to show that he's a good, credible NFL back, which I believe him to be, to line himself up for another contract somewhere, be it here or someplace else. With Kenyon Drake being sort of that complement, and it's interesting about the way the Patriots have utilized their running backs over the years. I can't remember what year it was, but I had to go back pretty far to find out the last time there was a 1,000-yard rusher with the Patriots. And I want to say it was LeGarrette Blount, 2016, somewhere around there, I think. I might be off a little bit with the years, but it certainly wasn't within the last few years. They generally do, like you said, kind of a running back by committee. There'll be one guy that kind of hovers in that 900 to 950, 160 yard range, and then somebody else right below them, whether it's about 600 to 700 yards, and then a guy like Brandon Bolden, getting in there around 250, 240 yards, on the ground, and obviously being able to catch the ball somewhere. A little bit with that second back too, being also a pass catcher. And that sort of lines up with what the Raiders are, with Josh Jacobs as your quote unquote 900-yard bell cow type of back. But with Kenyon Drake being able to be an asset in the pass game and the run game. So you figure his pass yards and receptions are going to be up, and then Brandon Bolden kind of filling in here and there.
Do you think Jacobs will still be a factor in the passing game?
Yeah, I think so. He wasn't on the field during OTAs or minicamp. They were, I think, doing some maintenance with him physically. He was in the building, but he just wasn't on the field. I did see a lot of screen passes, which I'm sure is going to make a lot of Raider fans happy, because it seemed like it sort of got abandoned here the last few years for whatever reason. So they were throwing it and utilizing it during minicamp and OTAs. So I would assume that Josh Jacobs is going to fit in there somewhere. But if not him, that's where Kenyon Drake really comes into play. And I'm sure Brandon Bolden has that on his resume as well.
Yeah, man, you nailed it. You nailed it so much. Now, the guys that are really important, the offensive line, these guys that are so crucial to this game. There's been some shuffling up front. How does that group kind of stack up?
Yeah, and that's sort of the still, if you were going to say, is there a concern with the Raiders, you'd have to go offensive line. Don't know yet, what the plan is going to be for Alex Leatherwood. It sure seemed during the offseason like he was going to get first crack at that right tackle position. But as the days went on, during OTAs and minicamp, there was more of a trade-off in first-team reps between he and Brandon Parker. So we'll see who's ready to win that job. And if it's neither one of those two, what do they do at right tackle? I think they want Alex Leatherwood to take a big decisive step forward and claim that job, and then figure it out from there to the left of him. And if that happens, then at right guard, okay, is it going to be Denzel Good? Is he healthy? He wasn't cleared for full practices during OTAs or minicamp. It seems to be in line for training camp. Does he become now the starting right guard, which is what the plan was last year going into the season, only for him to hurt his season-ending knee injury that first half of the first game of the season? And then Andre James, does he hold on to his center position? John's, I think he's going to. And then at left guard, is it going to be John Simpson? Is it going to be the rookie Dylan Parham? Who wins that battle? And then obviously you have certainty with Colton Miller, but I think it really does kind of start with, and I know the Raiders have talked a lot about, hey, just trying to find the best group of 5 out of this, group that they have, this 53-man roster that they're going to eventually peel down to. But for me, really curious to see what Alex Leatherwood ultimately decides, and it's going to be his decision in a lot of ways. His play is going to dictate, what happens at right tackle, and what does he show them, and does he create enough of a comfort level that he's going to be able to be ready to start the season at right tackle and continue to get better as the year goes on.
And that's been one of the underrated parts of the success of the Patriots, is that they've had consistently good offensive line play. So I think as we're going to see, I mean, that's going to be such a crucial. That's going to be could this be like the fulcrum on which its success or failure could be for the season?
Yeah, and what's so interesting about those Patriots offensive lines, they've typically gotten it done without big names. They don't necessarily spend a whole lot of money or high draft picks along the offensive line. From time to time they do, but it seems like they really tap into their development and their coaching to be able to cobble together an effective offensive line. And I feel like, they look at a guy like Alex Leatherwood, and look, he's got all the attributes. He's got length. He's a big, powerful man. He's smart. He cares. He's played a lot of football. I know it wasn't always the highest level of football last year in terms of the play, but he played a lot of football for a rookie last year. That's got to count for something. Mm-hmm. He seems a little bit more confident this year, a little bit more comfortable after spending a year, playing as a rookie. So I got to believe, and the sense is that they do feel like he's got what it takes, and that with some personal improvements, some different fundamentals, different coaching, that they're going to be able to get him on track at right tackle. And if that happens, I think everything else will kind of flow into place.
Last one, football related, the defense. Obviously, the addition of Chandler Jones could make this a really prolific pass rush alongside the All-Pro Max Crosby, who's fantastic. How does this team shape up both against the run and against the pass, especially the pass being so important in the AFC West?
Yeah, and I know that they're making an emphasis to stop the run. I don't think that was always the case. Last year, they were so focused on getting to the quarterback and kind of scheming it up to do that, which they did at a really good level. Sometimes you wonder if it kind of came at the expense of the run game, and also not having the right personnel sometimes to really be a stout run defense. So I think when you're talking about the new defensive coordinator. While obviously he talks about getting to the quarterback with 4 pass rushers, then letting everybody else, defend on the back end, the 7 other defensive players, and that's they want to field a team that can do that. But I also think that they're going to emphasize, stopping the run, and that's on some of those interior defensive linemen, the Jonathan Hankins, the Vernon Butlers, the Neil Farrells. Bilal Nichols, who they signed from the Chicago Bears. I think Divine Diablo, one of their linebackers, and Denzel Perryman play big in that as well. Jonathan Abram, if he holds on to his starting safety position, being able to be a thumper in that box safety position. So, I think that's going to be where it starts for them. But then obviously being able to create enough pressure on those quarterbacks to help the back end. And it's a very young back end and kind of an unproven back end, especially when you're talking about the 2 perimeter cornerbacks. Trayvon Mullen coming off an injury. Is he good enough? Is he healthy enough to reclaim one of his starting job? And is Rock Yassin going to be the starter at the other cornerback position? I think they understand what they have in Nate Hobbs, kind of a young emerging star player. I think they feel really good about what they have in Trayvon Moehrig, who also had a good, strong rookie year last year. But, are those cornerbacks going to be able to man those positions, and will that pass rush be able to give some support to what's kind of a young, unproven secondary?
Oh, Vinny, you broke it down perfect, my man. Last one. You've got more time. You've had more time in Vegas. Have you been able to explore, find any other places that you need to, any other Mexican food places that you need to recommend to our Familia watchers and listeners?
Yeah, well, definitely Juan's is tremendous. Juan's Flaming Fajitas they've got two spots, one in Henderson, and then another on Tropicana, kind of central Las Vegas. The El Dorado, there's 4 El Dorados. I just ate at the one over in Tivoli Square, which is over by Summerlin. Really good place, great environment, great food. So the El Dorado and Juan's Flaming Fajitas cannot go wrong.
Awesome, brother. Oh, Vinny B. Como siempre. This has been awesome. Thank you again. Now everybody knows where they need to eat when they go to Allegiant Stadium this year. One of the great new stadiums in the NFL. I did a turnaround trip and saw the Billy Joel concert, so I'm hoping to see a Raider game.
I was there that night.
Oh man, I should have found you to have a beer. That we were in some section that was pretty closed off. But okay, so next time we're gonna share that beer.
All right, sounds good.
Amigo, let's close up shop. I've got the little ticker. Tell everybody where all the places, because you're on every day.
Yeah. Raider Nation Radio, most mornings from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m., 9:20 locally. You could also listen, just go to the Raiders app, raiders.com, click on radio, and they've got us there. It's the morning tailgate show, 7 to 10 a.m. during training camp, because the Raiders practice during training camp. I'll be doing a lot of reports throughout the day on all our various shows, and then kick back to the mornings once the season starts. So Raider Nation Radio, you can check us out there. Vegas Nation, if you download the app, or just go to vegasnation.com. That's the Las Vegas Review-Journal's coverage of the Raiders. So we've got you covered on stories, columns, photo essays, videos, podcasts. We've got you all covered there. So Vegas Nation, the app, or just go vegasnation.com.
We both know that Raider Nation is strong.
Yes.
And no matter how many cities they've been in, Raider Nation is strong. So
yes.
Oh man, we're going to close up shop here, familia. Once again, thank you to our invitado de lujo, buen amigo Vinny Bonsignore. Thank you so much, and thank you all for listening. Again, make sure when you're going to fantasypoints.com, put in the promo code Familia22, Familia22 if you're doing it in Spanish. We'll get you 10% off your subscription. And also go to make sure you're going to YouTube. Give us a like and subscribe, por favor. And also, or if you want to listen to us on the audio side, Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Special thanks to Anchor for putting us out there. Again, you've got me at Jorge Martin 17 on Twitter. I push all our content out that way. Facebook and Instagram, Familia FFB, and also familiafb.com for original content. Otra vez. Thank you, everybody, for watching, listening, however you're consuming this. This NFL Insider Series is fantastic. Remember, todos somos familia. Salud.